Hello, my name's Zach McClure, and playing the music is Evan Greenhoe. And today we have a very, very special guest. He has written 2 films, along with writing the draft of a very, very well-known film, but most people know him as the voice of Snake. Everybody please welcome David Hayter.
Hey, guys. How are you? How are you, Internet?
Well, we're doing just fine.
Nice to speak. Okay. I was talking to the Internet in general, but as long as you gentlemen are in fine health, this should proceed beautifully.
Yep.
We are representing the Internet.
Good.
All right.
Pleasure to meet you.
All right, well then let's go ahead and start this off. I guess we'll start from the very beginning. What first got you into acting and voice acting?
I did a community theater play when I was 9 in El Toro, California, and I got hooked on acting then. And then I moved to California when I was 20. When I was 22 or so, I did an episode of Major Dad where I played a character with a Russian accent. And Helen Hunt's father, Gordon Hunt, was in the audience. And he heard the accent, and he cast me as a Russian on Captain Planet, which was a show he was directing at the time.
Ooh.
I played the Russian girl's Russian brother, and it was a really amazing experience, and everybody was really cool. And I think on that job I met both Mark Hamill and John Rhys Davies Sala, from Raiders Lost Ark. That's his name. Mm-hmm. And it was pretty awesome. So from then on, I was hooked.
Wow.
Very cool. I didn't know you were on Captain Planet.
I think we did two episodes. So it was really more of a guest star thing, but it was a really cool introduction to that world. Plus, it was Margot Kidder's first day as the computer. She was taking over for Whoopi Goldberg, and it was just prior to her sort of going a little crazy, and so that was really fun as well.
Very cool. All right, well, what were some of your favorite movies and shows growing up?
Well, I grew up in the aftermath of Jaws and the rise of Spielberg, George Lucas, and those people. So I was obsessed with the classics, Star Wars. Raiders of the Lost Ark really inspired me to get into the movie business completely. And then when Jim Cameron came along, I was totally blown away by his films. John Carpenter's earlier films, The Thing, Escape from New York, are still films which I watch at least once a year. And, I just always love genre films, big films, action films, heroes, villains, that sort of thing.
All right. So how'd you get a start in screenwriting?
Well, that was a strange story. I was an actor, and then in 1997, I produced a little film called Burn, which my friend Brian Singer put his name on as executive producer, and that helped me raise the money, and we sort of put this film together, and that was a pretty good experience. But then I was a broke film producer, and Brian hired me to answer the phones on X-Men, and basically he just kept going on about the script and what he wanted to do with it, and he just wasn't happy, and I had been a fan of the comic book, so I knew all the characters very well, so I suggested a scene one day, and he said, "Good, go write that for me." So I did, and he put it in the movie, and basically then he had me rewrite everything thousands upon thousands of times, and make a very long story short, I ended up getting sole credit on the movie, and suddenly I was a screenwriter. So that was X-Men was my first writing
Oh, that's a good place to start.
Yeah, it was pretty good. It was pretty good. There are worse places to get your break.
Definitely. Speaking of getting a break, how did you how did you get the part of Solid Snake?
Well, actually, it happened right around the same time, just before I started working on X-Men. I had a voiceover agent, and it was actually Chris Zimmerman, who has directed all of the English language Metal Gear material.
Wow.
Was the casting director on Captain Planet, and she remembered me from 5 years earlier and called me in just to, as something nice to do, to audition for this character. And so I went to this little house in Hollywood that had been converted into a soundstage, and I auditioned, and I just got the part. So that was a pretty fortunate day.
Definitely.
Yeah, it was cool. Going into it, there were pictures, the original artwork for the game all over the place. And I started looking at it, and I thought, this looks pretty amazing. And they were saying that they felt it was going to be a big, sort of groundbreaking game. And then, of course, I got to watch all the cutscenes as I voiced them. So I started to get the sense that this was pretty groundbreaking and a really special project to be a part of.
Yeah. So, just like you were saying, it's a very groundbreaking game. And how do you feel voicing this character through so many years and so many different iterations?
Well, it's just a dream. I mean, you look at characters on TV, actors who get to play some great role. You look at Alec Baldwin on 30 Rock or something, and he gets to play this great role for 5, 6, 7 years, and really get into it and really explore it in all these different ways. And this has been 12 years. I think I've done 9 games in total, and the story is so complex and so rich, and just goes through so many different worlds and times and moments in Snake's life. So it's such a remarkable thing for an actor to be able to delve into a character this deeply, and for it to be so popular, and for people to really respond to it the way they do is really awesome. I mean, people are super cool to me on Twitter and on the net, and it's just been phenomenal.
Do you have any favorite lines from any of the games?
Oh, well, I have many favorite lines. I think love can boom on a battlefield. And I also liked, how did you ever last 10 years? I like Snake's. The thing about Snake that makes him really fun is his. On the surface, he just has a total disdain for everybody. He just doesn't. He doesn't care if you're a little kid. He doesn't care if you're a little girl. He'll insult you to your face. But at the same time, he'll always go out of his way to save the world. He'll always risk himself for the greater good, and that's why why the audience, I think, allows him to be as crusty as he is. But I just love his sort of insulting demeanor with people, because he's used to being a lone mercenary out in the jungle somewhere and fighting for his life, and he just doesn't have a lot of time for people's nonsense or humanity.
Wow.
And so that's sort of my favorite aspect of it. That's where it's the most fun, I think.
Awesome. Well, what is your reaction to the popularity of the character and the MGS series overall?
Well, my reaction is purely positive. I have a very interesting life, because I work on these big movies, and I have a nice house in California, and I get to do fun things. I get to sort of travel the world and work on movies and everything. I don't have a lot of fame per se from being a screenwriter. People don't really care who the screenwriter is. I mean, some people do, but it's really mostly hardcore movie fans. But when I go to Comic-Con or something and I do an appearance in front of a bunch of Snake fans, it's like being the Beatles for a weekend or something, and that's really, really cool. I mean, just sort of walking around Comic-Con and signing autographs and taking pictures with people, and then I go back to my life and people don't really, I mean, I very rarely get recognized on the street sometimes, and everybody is invariably super nice, and because I think they're concerned I might snap and kill them. Out of sheer snakiness. That's the other benefit of playing a character that's killed so many people is people tend to be fairly respectful. So, it's really. I mean, I don't think there's, apart from the nodes on my vocal cords, I don't think there's any downside to playing Snake.
Awesome. So will you
really
playing a central role in all of this?
If it's over, yeah, absolutely. I mean, nothing is forever, and so letting it go would be sort of bittersweet. I'm not entirely convinced, and this is not. I don't have any inside information on this. I'm not entirely convinced Snake, that Snake is gone forever. There's still Big Boss. There's the guy was a clone to begin with, so there's many things they could do with it. So I don't, every time I finished a game, we thought, oh, maybe that's the last one. And then they come back and they say, okay, we're doing another one. And I'm like, great. So, if I never did it again, I would miss it, absolutely. But at the same time, I really have loved this experience, and it's really been very, very remarkable. So to get more would just be icing, really.
Before I ask the next question, have you heard anything about the possibility that Peace Walker might be porting over to PS3?
I did hear it during an interview for Internet Radio, and no, actually, I heard it. I heard that a couple days ago. I have Google alerts set for my name, so anytime somebody says, "Wow, David Hayter sucks," that comes up on my computer. So thanks for that. And I just got a Google alert saying that was a possibility, but I don't know any more than that.
Okay.
I hope so, because that would be pretty cool. Where's it supposed to go?
PS3.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that would be great.
Yeah, there are some news reports out right now, but
that's the only one I haven't played all the way through. Because I just don't use my PSP that much. Although for the game, they sent me a very cool Peace Walker PSP, which is all done up in camouflage and has the cool bomber peace symbol on it. And
wow.
So I'd love it if they did that, because that was an amazing game to record. All that stuff about bringing the boss back and putting her mind into a machine and sort of Snake facing up to all the questions that she had left behind was really compelling to me, and I really had a great time. Plus, doing that, I can't even remember now if I did Peace Walker. I think I did Peace Walker first and then Metal Gear 4. Is that right?
Let's see.
Nobody's contradicting me, so...
Let's see. I know...
in any case, it was close to Metal Gear 4, and I knew that Metal Gear 4, I was going to be this sort of desiccated old guy at the end of his life, and I thought, for Peace Walker, I want to play this like this is Big Boss at his finest, at his strongest, at his, most powerful, and so that was a really fun game to do, and I love the visuals of it, too. I think the artwork is astounding.
Okay, well, back onto the questions we wrote down. What was it like working with Hideo Kojima?
Well, it's great. But I don't I don't get to see him very often. I mean, I didn't meet Mr. Kojima in person until Metal Gear 4, I think. I mean,
wow.
I think that was the first time we actually met in person. We had sort of exchanged letters and exchanged gifts sort of from LA to Tokyo, but he actually came up for Metal Gear 4. You know, he's really, I think he is more involved in the Japanese versions of the game because he's Japanese, and that's
Yeah.
I think that's what he feels the primary game. I mean, I shouldn't really speak for him, but that's been sort of the sense that I got, and I think that, you know, the English voice recording has always been left to a producer from Konami, or a producer from Kojima Productions and Konami, and then Chris Zimmerman, who directs it. So those are really the people I work with in the booth day to day. Like I say, we've, you know, Kojima-san and I have had correspondence, and I've met him a couple of times, but we haven't really worked together in that sense, you know, in the direct sense.
Well, from what I've heard, well, I don't know if these are true reports or not, but Kojima seems to really love the American Snake voice, and in some views, I've heard him say that he likes it more than the Japanese voice sometimes.
Oh, really? I always read it the opposite. I always kind of thought he put up with me, and no, I mean, I had always understood that he preferred the Japanese voice, but so that's really the first time I've heard that. That would be lovely if that were the case. And you know, obviously, the English language versions have proven very, very, very popular, and in fact, I had heard a rumor back in the day that we're going to do Spanish language versions, French language, you know, German, all this stuff. But the English language version was so popular that they just sold it in all those territories with subtitles. So it certainly, you know, our English voice casts have been very popular, and I hope he likes it. I you know, Snake, for all people identifying me with Snake, you know, it's really Kojima's baby, and so I just try to do right by that, because I think he's a nice man and a brilliant man.
Well, see, I had heard that back around when Twin Snakes came out, and instead of re-recording the Japanese dialogue for it, they just released it in Japan with Japanese subtitles.
Oh, is that right? Oh, I didn't know that. That's cool. Do you know why we had to re-record it?
Because
I bet you don't.
Actually, I think I do. Is it because the English voice acting was recorded in a mansion without any soundproofing?
Yeah, yes. Well, then turns out you did know. It wasn't a mansion. It was that house that I told you about in Hollywood. It was a little two-story bungalow, but you could. But what happened was the sound card was so much better on the GameCube than it was on the original PlayStation that you could hear the traffic stopping at the corner of Orange Street out on the other side of the hall, so you could hear motorcycles and things. And so we had to re-record the entire game, which was great because they paid me again.
That's awesome. Well, Mr. Hayter, you're famous for the voice Snake. It's probably the most famous one that you're known for. But besides Solid Snake, what's the favorite character you've voiced?
Well, I earlier in my career, I did a lot of anime, and I was working at this studio where they had sort of gotten to know me, and I was, they knew I was good, they knew I worked fast, and so they cast me to play Lupin in The Castle Cagliostro, which I believe is Hayao Miyazaki's first film, and I didn't know Miyazaki at the time, I wasn't familiar with his work. I still don't know him personally, but I was recording this film, and it's this '60s era heist movie, and playing this sort of slick criminal, and the visuals just got crazier and crazier and more amazing. And as we were doing the film, I was like, this really is quite an incredible movie. And sorry, my agents are trying to call me on the other line. I'll ignore them. and so that's one of my favorites. I did Moldiver back in the day, which I enjoyed immensely, and I played one of the lead voices in a OAV series called Fushigi Yugi.
Yes.
A character named Tamahome, and that was a huge amount of work, 52 episodes, and I was doing that while I was writing X-Men. So I literally which we were shooting in Toronto, so I'd literally hop on a plane on Friday when I finish my work, fly back to Los Angeles, work on Fushigi Yugi over the weekend, get on a plane, fly back to Toronto for Monday's work. So that was really debilitating, but fun.
Awesome.
So those are some of the fun ones. Yeah, there's been a lot of fun ones. I mean, I love playing the Guyver and Guyver Dark Hero, and I've been very, very fortunate.
Speaking of your screenwriting, there's been some kind of confusion about your involvement in the Watchmen screenplay. Could you kind of get a little more in-depth about that?
Well, what's the confusion? Is there confusion?
Well, a lot of people know that you did an early draft, but not a lot of people are very sure about like what the content was, and Alan Moore has gone on record to say that he liked your script, so...
Yeah. Well, I didn't do an early draft. I worked on it for 7 years and had it at 4 different studios, and traveled, I don't know how many, countless thousands of miles, and lived in London for 6 months, worked on it with Paul Greengrass when he was going to direct it, flew out to New York for a weekend when Darren Aronofsky was attached, and met with him. I was attached to direct at one point. I mean, to say I wrote an early draft is technically correct, but then I wrote another 100 drafts after that.
So it was like just it was a very confusing film.
It's a very confusing film. Well, yeah, I guess so.
Well, the process was.
I'm sorry?
Well, the process of it was.
The process of it was a nightmare. Yeah, I mean, it was. I mean, certainly the most complicated production I ever worked on, and I mean, one of the most complicated productions ever put together. So, but basically, my drafts were very close to the finished movie. The difference between my drafts, and drafts were close to the book as well. But the difference between my drafts and the current and the final movie was that I had set mine present day,
okay.
and well, I think that might have been it. I mean, I was trying to tie it more to our modern situations than 85. I mean, I think both are valid ways to approach it, but it was only when Zack Snyder, who was so hot coming off of 300, came on board that we were allowed to go back to 1985. You know, when it was just me, or it was Paul Greengrass wanted it present day, and I sort of wanted it present day, although I loved the 1985 version as well. But that was the primary difference between my final versions and the final outcome of the film.
Okay.
But please correct anybody that says I just wrote an early draft, because I got too many lines on my face from that movie and worked too hard for it to be, oh yeah, he wrote something, a few years ago.
I'll make sure to.
I paid my price.
Yeah. Well, what are your plans nowadays and for the future?
Well, I'm trying to direct and produce and sort of branch out from just screenwriting. I'd like to go back to acting in some capacity. I mean, I still do voiceovers here and there just for fun, but I really kind of miss acting. I'd love to go back to that, and so I have a couple of projects that I am attached to produce, and 2 that I'm attached to direct, and so it's just a matter of getting those through the system and getting them funded and getting somebody to give me, tens of millions of dollars to do that. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward stuff, And
well, tell us a bit more about Dark Hero Studios.
Dark Hero I put together for that express purpose because I've been working on so many things for the studios and that's great, but you don't really control those projects. You sort of get hired to do what they want you to do, and so the idea behind Dark Hero was to take advantage of new technologies to create genre films at mid-level budgets, so between $30 and $60 million, to be able to create things which are a little edgier, a little smarter, not as big of a risk going in on the top, but sort of, we came up with this concept before the movie District 9 came out, and then District 9 came out and really achieved what I had thought would be the future of filmmaking, which is, I just don't believe, and maybe I'm wrong, that the $200 million budget is a sustainable thing. I mean, eventually you're going to have $300 million budgets, maybe we do now, and one of them's going to go wrong and bankrupt the studio, and then everybody's going to pull back. And I think with digital technology becoming as inexpensive as it is, I don't know. I think filmmakers are discovering you can do things more affordably and achieve an edgier, smarter piece of work. So that's what Dark Hero is put together to achieve.
All right,
looking forward to it.
So for this last section, I guess I need to explain a little bit. When I first got the interview with you, I was following this thing called a Let's Play about Metal Gear Solid 4.
Right.
And I basically said, I'm going to have this interview with David Hayter. Does anybody want to ask any questions to him? And I got a flood of questions coming in. So I decided to do a fan-submitted question section for you.
Okay, cool.
So I guess I'll go ahead and start off.
Should I answer in Old Snake's voice, or how do you want that?
Well, I guess if you feel that Snake is best for the answer, you can...
I'll toss it in when I feel it's appropriate.
Okay, because I know there's at least one that I think Snake will want to answer.
Okay.
But I guess the first one from Maxwell Adams at the Something Awful Forums asks, have you ever used the Solid Snake voice to mess with people, like at drive-thrus or when giving an order?
That's the dumbest question I've ever heard, Maxwell. No, I'm just kidding. Yes. Have I? Well, I use it to yell at my dogs. Stay. And that tends to have an effect. I shot a little video that I've been meaning to release for forever, sort of a parody video of the Old Snake trailer, war has changed. And there's a section where, and then I said, we fade to black, and I say, fast food has changed, and then I order breakfast at McDonald's in the Old Snake voice, and we didn't set it up. We just drove up to a drive-through, and I just ordered. I'm like, yes, are you still serving breakfast? And they they thought it was a little odd, but she went along with it as if I was a human being, and so yes, as a matter of fact, I have. The Snake voice, as you can hear, is very different from my normal speaking voice. So if I do it, I mean, it really is sort of put on, and people think that if they don't know Metal Gear, they think I'm a lunatic. So I don't do it too often, but I have done it, yes.
Awesome. All right, question number 2 is from Slide on the Something Awful forums, and he says, what is the casting process like for major projects? And more specifically, what was it like for you in MGS?
Well, the casting process, for voiceovers, it's pretty uniform. It's always the same thing, really, whether they're big projects or not. You go into a booth, and they give you the copy in advance, and you sort of run it out loud out in the courtyard. So you got a bunch of actors sort of talking themselves. And then you go in and you slate. You either do the audition on site, like I did for Metal Gear, or you do it at your agent's sound booth. And you go in and you slate and you say, "Hi, my name is David Hayter. I'm auditioning for the role of Snake." And then you audition, and that's pretty much how it works.
Sweet.
And then they call you, and you either do a callback, or you get the job, or you don't get the job.
Awesome.
That was the worst.
Okay, next from good listener and Johan Z from the Something Awful forums ask, how involved are you in the Metal Gear Solid series storylines and scripts?
I'm not. I mean, I'm not really involved at all. Like, they don't. I look at it as a very different thing from something I'm hired to write. Having produced some things and work. It's really annoying when your actors are rewriting their parts.
Yeah.
And normally you want to stop them from doing that. Keep this in mind when you're making your film, unless they're brilliant. I mean, some actors are able to just come up with things that are so real and so in the moment that they're great, that they're better than what you've written. That's fine. But, Metal Gear, video games in particular, are not like that. Video games are a blending of story and game mechanics that you can't really mess with. They have to play off each other. In fact, I'm doing another video game right now where I can't change a single syllable, or the computer it'll cause a hiccup in the computer and it won't play. So each line has to be done syllable for syllable. Now, Metal Gear is not quite like that. I talk, and Snake's face is programmed to move its mouth along with my vocal sounds, which is very cool. But I also... So if a line is written in a way that it's kind of translated awkwardly from the Japanese, I try to figure out what the intent of the line was, and I may change a word or two here or there. But if I do, I literally have to ask the director. I say, Chris, here, can we say this or this, this? She has to ask the producer. He has to call Japan. Japan has to okay it. They have to come back to me. And it's a process, and so I don't really do it too often. So, and I certainly don't shape the stories. I mean, usually by the time I'm doing the voice recording, the game is already nearly finished, and the Japanese version is pretty much done first. So there's not a lot of leeway for me to change it, and I don't. And I think it would be really annoying for Kojima-san if I did.
Okay.
All right. This next one comes from Satanus of the Something Awful forums, and he asks, could Solid Snake beat the Guyver?
Could Solid Snake beat the Guyver? That's a good question. They're both very handsome. That's a joke. Thank you. The Guyver, I think the Guyver is very tough, and he's armored, and he's got all those weapons, but he's not. But Sean Barker is not quite as smart as Snake. He's just a kid who got implanted with this bio booster armor, as you do, And so I think physically, hand to hand, the Guyver would probably win, but I have a feeling Snake would outsmart the Guyver and strategically wallop the bejesus out of him.
Well, what does Snake think?
Snake. Pansy Guyver. nice bulging suit. I think he would be very derisive towards the Guyver, and he might take his licks, but I have a feeling he would keep beating him until the Guyver was beaten to the ground. I think what Snake would do is trick Sean Barker into saying the word Guyver. The armor would disappear, and then he would crack him in the nose. knows. And so, what the hell are you supposed to be? I'm the Guyver. Oh, crap! That sort of thing. That's a little scene for you.
All right, awesome.
Like two of my most famous roles.
All right. All right, this comes from Two Pair, also from the Something Awful forums. You've written 3 screenplays for comic book movies. What's your favorite superhero, and what comic book movie would you love to write, direct, or whatever for?
Well, my favorite superhero well, there's 2 of my favorites that I've written for. I mean, I love them all, but, writing for Wolverine is just awesome, because he's just, he's pretty complex, but he's just got that attitude that's so much fun to write. And then Rorschach as well. I just love Rorschach to death. He's such a crazy, tragic, lovable figure. And as far as writing and directing, I intend to do a kick-ass Batman someday, and I would also love to do a great Daredevil movie, because I was 12 when Frank Miller was writing Daredevil, and those stories are my all-time favorite. The Elektra series was my all-time favorite storyline in comics ever, probably.
This is kind of a random question, but what would you say if a live-action Metal Gear Solid movie was made and Hugh Jackman was asked to play Solid Snake?
Well, I would love that. That's one of the ideas I've heard, and I think it's great. Hugh and I got our big break together on the same film, and he, I mean, not only is he hands down the most lovable guy, I mean, he's just the nicest, most charming guy to be around, but he's also, I feel like, maybe this is arrogant to say, but I feel like he's already played some of the more vicious sides of my personality with Wolverine, and I think knowing Snake as well as I do, and knowing Hugh like I do, I think it would be a pretty great fit. I think he's a very strong actor, and he brings such power to a role like that. I think it would kick ass.
All right. Well, our next question is a 2-parter, so we're gonna do this in 2 parts. It's from El Belmundo and Rock Dash of the Something Awful forums, and part 1 says, "How did the Solid Snake voice come about, and what made you do the old Snake voice that you do in MGS4?"
Well, Konami made me do the old Snake voice. Oh no, it was part of the character. It was just who he was. The original voice, that's kind of glib. I'll fix it in post. The original voice, I actually auditioned for Snake with a different voice. I actually auditioned with a voice much closer to my own. I was pretty young at the time, so I think I just sort of aged my voice up a little and basically did it, pretty close to the way I'm speaking now. But I got cast, and then there was 2 or 3 weeks before we started recording, and I was looking at pictures of the guy and reading the script. They sent me the script earlier on, and I was like, this is a guy who, he's been a Special Forces soldier for, 15 some odd years. He's gone through enough stuff that he has escaped to, or he's just sort of taken off to Alaska, he's already left the business. And so he must have been through a lot. And, and his face, the drawing sort of reflected that, and it just got rougher and rougher. And I thought, it really came from that opening scene on the submarine with the Colonel, where the Colonel's saying, nice to have you back, and Snake's really ticked off at being there, like, what the hell am I doing back here? And so I felt like the voice had to have that sort of history to it, that sort of weight to it. And so that's what sort of came together together. And then as we were recording, I think we were a week in to the whole thing when Chris played me the original demo of my first audition, and it wasn't anywhere near. It was just a completely different thing. But we all liked where I was at, and I kind of felt like I had sort of, it was strange, I kind of felt like I tapped into something that was going to work. You know, I felt like, and it really wasn't intended to be a super real voice. It was sort of intended to be a heightened video game thing, but it had this energy to it, and it had this personality to it that really kind of worked. So that's how that came about. And then Old Snake, you know, I knew he was old, but I knew it was a cellular degeneration. He was falling apart. So I thought, you know, if he started out gravelly, that it should just get worse, and that his trachea is falling apart, and he's trying to force this voice through his body, which is falling apart. And I thought that kind of fit with what I had done in the earlier games, but took it to a different level, and so that's how it all came together.
All right. Well, part two of the question was, how drunk did you get from drinking whiskey to get the Old Snake voice?
Well, I told some interviewer back in the day that I had to, you know, drink shots of whiskey, and I think I even said I smoked, you know, a bunch of cigarettes to get there. And then I felt bad because I don't smoke, and I didn't want kids to be smoking, and Snake smokes, and I'm kind of conflicted about that. So I didn't, to be able to achieve the voice, I didn't get drunk specifically to do that, but I had grown up in Japan. I moved to Japan when I was 15, so I was going to clubs and bars from the time I was 15 on. By the time I turned 21, I was living in the States. I was already over drinking. I mean, I had been partying for 6-7 years straight. So, in a way, that experience did help provide me with the voice that I have today. And in answer to the question, very, very drunk.
All right, next.
At times, I mean, yeah. Oh. I got whole weekends I don't remember. Nice.
All right, so the next one we have here actually comes from Chris Coleman from the David Hayter fan page on Facebook. He said, I would like to know your feelings about the Black Widow in Iron Man 2. He knew that you had said at some point that Black Widow is one of your favorite characters, and he was wondering your feelings on the portrayal of her in Iron Man 2.
Well, you know, yeah, I had worked on I was theoretically going to make my directorial debut with a Black Widow movie for Marvel way back in the day, and I worked on the script for a long time, and it eventually came down to Marvel had decided to start doing films themselves, you know, paying for films themselves, which I think started with the first Iron Man, and they didn't want to do like a mid-level film at that point, and so it all kind of fell apart, which was a shame because I really loved that script. You know, I love Scarlett Johansson. I don't know a man who doesn't. I think she's amazing and very compelling. The problem is Iron Man 2 didn't give her anything to do. You know, there was no... You didn't really have any real perspective on who she was. Now they're talking about doing a Black Widow movie, which will obviously focus on the character and broaden it. But so I mean, short answer is it was cool to see her brought to life, and I think you know, Scarlett is a tremendous choice for that character, but there wasn't a lot to it. So that's my answer.
Okay, and he also asks, why didn't you get a chance to work on X-Men 3, and why was your involvement in X-Men 2 lesser than it was in X-Men 1?
On X-Men 2, I worked on the script for a year with Brian, and then I handed it off in February of '02 or '02, I think. I handed the script off, and they went and they started shooting in March. So I had a pretty serious impact on X-Men 2. I mean, a very serious percentage of that movie was all written by me.
Yeah.
But in February, I had to go to Australia to shoot a pilot, and I was gone for a month. And Brian Singer, the director, was not thrilled that I had to be away for that time period. So he brought in those other two guys to do on-set rewrites and things like that. So that's what they did. That was the situation with X2. And then basically, Brian and I had separate sort of falling outs with the studio, and by the time X-Men 3 came around, I wasn't interested. I mean, I didn't really want to do it without Brian, and I was still sort of ticked off at some of the people involved. So, unfortunately, it didn't come together, which is a shame because Brian and I had already planned out how it was going to go, X-Men 1 through 3, and I sincerely wish we could have seen it through for the sake of the actors and the audience and the fans, but politically it just wasn't happening.
Okay.
All right. This next question is a bit of a joke question, but it comes from Fraser of Video Games Awesome, and it asks, who is the most attractive girl in the Metal Gear series? Is it Meryl, Sniper Wolf, or Raiden?
That is a funny question. Are they talking about? Do you think they're talking about in real life or in the game?
I think they mean in the game.
In the game.
I have to say, all the women are pretty attractive in real life as well. Mei Ling and Dr. Naomi and Meryl and Sniper Wolf. I don't know. I think Sniper Wolf is probably the hottest. I mean, she's the most dangerous. I always liked Mei Ling as well, but Sniper Wolf, had an edge to her. Well, she tried to shoot me in the head, so that's pretty much as edgy as you can get. And, so, I'm sorry?
Oh, no, I was just laughing.
Okay, so, and Raiden, Raiden's just not my type. He's very attractive, though. Delicate hands. I like making fun of Raiden. That's pretty fun. I can't go for Raiden because Otacon would get so jealous.
Wow.
Oh no.
I think love is blowing in my pants.
Wow. Oh, I liked Meryl.
You're gonna have to use that as a radio as a cutaway.
Oh, I definitely will. I liked Meryl back in MGS1, but then her shoulders became so broad in MGS4. It was really weird.
It's the Delt workout. I think she was doing PX90 or something. and then she marries Johnny Sasaki, the diarrhea kid. Oh crap.
Yeah.
Yeah, Meryl. I think if I had it to do over again, I'd probably just leave her at Shadow Moses Island. If I didn't know how it was going to go, I was like, "Hey, Meryl," and then nothing.
Yeah, I could actually see MGS1 ending somewhat similar to MGS3 did, but it never happened.
What, by killing her in a field of flowers?
No, the other one.
What's the other one?
Where they have the nice little chat on the carpet before it cuts away to the next morning.
Oh, between me and Eva?
Yeah, but instead it'd be Solid
To
Snake
refresh
and
my memory,
Meryl.
yeah. Right. Well, that would have been better. I mean, it should have... yeah. That whole Johnny storyline still ticks me off.
All right. This next one actually comes from General Ironicus, who is one of the people that was Let's Playing the Metal Gear Solid 4 game. And he asks, what character would you most like to portray, and what existing character would you jump at the chance to write for?
Oh, and what character? What kind of character?
He asks what existing character you'd like to play, and what character would you like to write for?
Well, again, I would love to play Batman. That's my, he's sort of my model for life, really. I mean, I don't buy a vehicle that I don't think Bruce Wayne would drive, and my wardrobe, my watch, everything is sort of dictated by Batman. The fact that I took martial arts was because of Batman. So I would love to play that part. And like I say, I'd love to write a great Daredevil movie.
Okay.
I mean, there's a bunch of things I would love to write. I'm also a massive Stephen King fan. There's a bunch of stories there that I'd like to adapt, and there's many things. I just sort of see what comes along and grab at it.
Okay. This is
General Ironicus.
Yeah, their Let's Play is actually pretty good. They did all the other games so far, and it's one of the most popular on the internet right now.
I don't know what that is, a Let's Play. Is that where they all play it online?
It's a playthrough online with a commentary over it.
Oh, cool. Oh, I have to check it out.
And yeah, they go through all like the Easter eggs. For MGS1, they did a comparison between Metal Gear Solid and Metal Gear Solid Twin Snakes. They interlaced all the cutscenes and everything. Cool. So yeah, they're pretty good.
Oh, check them out.
I don't know if they'll like me selling it to you, but whatever.
Oh, I think they will. I think they'll be thrilled.
But actually,
not to hell with them.
Actually, kind of a personal question, but do you remember anything that you were going to be doing for X-Men 3? What you and
what Brian and I were thinking?
Yeah.
Well, it was more. I mean, I've sort of said a few things about it in the past. I mean, it was more about. It was more about, the Dark Phoenix and Jean. First of all, Dark Phoenix was a lot more like Dark Phoenix in my version. In the actual movie, for some reason she sort of came off like a zombie or like a vampire or something. She was like this mindless creature, and to me, Dark Phoenix was who she was because she was so infused with power and so blown away by how much power she had that it started to erode her morality. But it didn't make her dumb. It didn't make her unable to communicate. If anything, it made her smarter, more powerful, more godlike. And so basically what it was going to be was the building war between humanity and the mutants. And so, of course, Xavier and Magneto are sort of dealing with things in their own way, and then Phoenix comes into it, and she says, "You know what? I think Magneto's right. I'm gonna go to Washington and kick their asses." And she basically flies to Washington and faces down the American military in front of the White House and just, beats the living bejesus out of them. And then the X-Men realize that they have to stop her. They have to kill her. That it's going to come down to, and they did do this to a certain extent with Wolverine, but the greatest moment in X-Men history was what I wanted to lead to, which is, Wolverine has been, the whole movie the movie series revolves around how do you protect your people? Do you do it Xavier's way through peace and justice and trying to do the right thing, or do you do it through Magneto's way through the use of power and protecting your people? Both are understandable viewpoints. Phoenix danger to the entire planet, to her people, to the human beings, to everybody, that they're forced to stop her. At the same time, Wolverine is dealing with the question, am I a man or am I an animal? Am I a killer or am I a hero? And all this time he's in love with Jean, and in the end there's that moment in the comic books where he gets her down on the ground and he draws his claws, pops his claws, and she gets control of herself for that second, and she says, "Do it, Logan. Do it. You have to kill me or I won't, I'll be unstoppable." And he can't do it. In the end, he loves her, and in the end, he is a human being, and he can't kill her, and she becomes Dark Phoenix again and throws him to the side, and that to me was really the pinnacle of all of those stories sort of brought together in one moment. So that's essentially what we were going for, and of course there were a lot of other details. There were Sentinels. We saw a Sentinel in X3, but there were a lot more tuned into the story, and some of the designs we had made were really, really cool. I don't want to tip them because they were really Brian's ideas, but that was the case.
Okay, I think we have only about 2 more questions here.
All right. Okay, well, Christian Johansson of the Facebook fan page says, which installment in the Metal Gear series has your favorite story, or which one of them means the most to you?
Oh, my favorite story. Well, I've always said I think Metal Gear 3 is my favorite of the games. That story of the boss really was very affecting for me, and I loved sort of the retro aspect of it. What was the other part of the question? What game means the most to me?
Yes.
I guess maybe the first game means the most to me, and that's where it started. That's the one I've sort of been living with for the longest, and it's really fun to sort of look back on that game and I hear myself being so young and sort of starting out on that journey. So that probably means the most to me emotionally.
Okay. And I guess a good one to end off on is from Sam Bernstein from the Something Awful forums. Do you ever get sick of being known primarily as Solid Snake?
Never. No, it's great. Well, yeah, listen, if I think Otacon is thrilled with being known as Otacon, and he had to wet his pants the first time we saw him. So, this is a pretty badass series, and obviously Snake is such a great character that no, not at all. I mean, if I were only an actor still, and that was my primary job, and nobody cared about anything I did but Snake, I might take that a little personally, but I'm not. It's like having a hobby that you're famous for, and it's great. There is no downside.
Awesome. Well, do you have any last words for anybody?
No. No. Not that I can think of. Keep gaming, and hopefully I'll see you out there and
awesome.
In the world someday.
Well, thank you so much for this interview.
Well, thank you guys. It's really, really fun. Great questions, and my best to everyone there in Texas and the world. And if there's anything else I can do for you, please let me know.